Okay, so I think that's enough time to get everybody in here. We'll get started. We're going to go from the top. Christina's here with me today. She's got a couple questions she wants to answer. Got quite a few, so I'm going to get started with the general, and then we'll move on to COVID and updates and AI updates. Okay, so we'll just go from the top. These are not in any particular order. I am going to touch on Medical and the EV and the different verticals and what's going on in the government space today. So hang tight, I will get to all of that. So let me try to go through these fast so I can spend more time on those. Does DM do business with LG in South Korea? We have, and we are currently. Any update on institutional interest? Institutional interest is ongoing. We're still in talks with several different banks who would like to, who are looking into us. I would say that the institutional interest has been much better than it has been, let's say, even from last year. So that's on pretty high. We like that. There's a couple questions around this one. I'm going to answer this one real succinctly. A lot of questions around insider and who buys stock and who doesn't. I don't dispense stock advice, right? And I won't do it. So I can't do it. I'm not allowed to do it, even internally. And I'm also not privy to, what the other insiders are or are not doing. If they do it, it's filed on SETI, so you can watch there. Update at this time on Ronin or European sales? No. We will have an update for the Europe stuff in June. That will be in June. Does DM still have 20 mil in the bank? Yes. Any updates on the roll-up strategy? Yeah, I'm going to go into this one later, as this crosses over with just about everything. So I'm going to hold off on that, and then we're going to address that in more detail. With the different verticals, can the DM team handle it, or is there additional hiring needed? At this moment, there should not be any additional hiring needed. There was a big chunk of hiring done in December, January, February. So we should have everybody we need now. And just to expand on this a little bit, again, like with the roll-up strategy, I'll go into that in just a second, just to give an overall of how all these projects are doing. Are there NDAs for certain contracts and how much time has to pass until you talk about the content? That depends on the contract. We're going to be able to talk about EV stuff very shortly, within the next month or two. So that one's going to come up shortly, for instance. And so we will be telling everybody about all the stuff we're doing inside there. But for instance, say a government contract, it may never open up for that particular contract. Now, that said, with the government contracts, we do get to keep the intellectual property so you can see what's going on with the IP eventually. But, with the government contracts, if it's classified until it's not, and nothing I can do about that, or I don't have any insight onto that process. With Medical, this will be out shortly, and we're going to go into that, like I said, in just a little bit when we go into the verticals. And we've already shown some of that and talked about portions of it. So recap, EV shortly, next couple months. Government stuff as we're allowed to talk about it. Medical, we'll get to that in just a minute. And there's a question about the space station bids. Okay, so this is a while ago. We did put in with MDA for a co-bid around the Lunar Space Station. This is a really long one, so don't I wouldn't expect to hear from this for at least another year. If we hear, this bid is a decade long, no joke. So it went in, but we don't, that's going to be 2 to 3 years in the judging. Um, have there been any U.S. government contracts since the announced Air Force contract? What is the general status of negotiations of contracts with the U.S. government? Those in particular, with the Air Force contracts, I can't talk about at this time. It is right after end of the fiscal year. So there's been no change in there right now. If there is a change, then it's material, we'll let everybody know. The status of contracts with the U.S. government. It appears that we may be going back to D.C. not too long. So we were on a program to get fast tracked into the U.S. government for pre-clearance purposes, and we were 2 out of 3 steps through that program. That program was halted. That program is going to be turned back on. We received notice about that not too long ago. When it does turn back on, then we will. Apparently, we're pretty high up in line to go ahead and finish that up. That said, they didn't give a date. They just said get ready. So we will, when a date comes, we'll let everybody know. So, are you happy with the Korean sales team and other government contracts coming in? We have been in contact with the Korean government, and we are pretty happy with how the Korean team has been performing over the past year. So we are not staying strictly private over there. No. Any thoughts of changing up the board of directors? Any change to the board of directors is material, and so that'll come out in press releases. I can't talk about changes to the board of directors here as it is material. So what is, okay, with a question about the roll-up strategy. Is this to make things clear to regulators or to send clear to investors to keep an eye out for things that come? It's both, to be honest. Anytime we make any type of moves like this, it's scrutinized by regulators. That's just the law. We have been heavily scrutinized over the past 2 years due to our involvement with COVID. That's loosening up somewhat, but not completely loosened. So we need to make, a signal to the regulators about what we're doing and telling them what we're doing. In addition, we do want to keep our investors informed of what we're doing. And so as we're looking at these verticals and applying our tech to these different verticals, we want people to know that. So are companies taken more seriously after uplisting to the TSX than they are in the TSXV? That's a pretty broad question. In general, yes. What it really brings in is the benefits of stability, right? And this is a very broad brush, so please look this up. But if you're on the TSX, you're generally a more established, more stable company, et cetera. But the differences in the TSX and the TSXV is online, and you can go take a look at it yourself. But the venture is generally, newer companies, startup style companies, et cetera. And the TSX has stricter requirements for joining, more money in the bank, more stability, things like that. Do you put out a press release for every AI contract or significant ones? Only ones that are judged material. For smaller contracts and stuff, they come in with the financials. Can we expect you to ring the bell on the TSX? Probably not. I don't even know if they're doing that right now. Although we will look into it. Okay. All right, so let's move on. I think we got about just everything. And same question about the most exciting things we'll go into in a minute. Let me get through the rest of these small questions, and I'm going to go into overall overview of what's going on with Medi-Call, the EVs, and um, the government contracts. Okay, so there's a couple questions here with Medi-Call. I'm just going to go over that in total in just a minute. And there's a few other questions in here about COVID, and there's a few of these. So just let me say, if for COVID and the test kits, okay, people are asking, well, are test kit sales going to continue given that COVID's still around? The short answer to that is yes. The long answer to that is, we're not, I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't know what's going to happen as far as those test kits are concerned. Okay. As governments make rules and change regulations, that's going to affect our test kit sales. Anything for the Screen Actors Guild will affect our test kit sales, et cetera. But we're just going to have to wait and see what they do. There's nothing that I can do to influence that decision or any of those decisions at this point. But we are going to keep going, for the ride. So news agencies, security traders, and information hung using DM services, but well, they are. Okay. Okay, so most of the rest of this deals with these verticals. So let me just deal with those one at a time. And just one sec. All right. So we're going to start with, well, let's start with the government contract, as there's a lot of those here. So in general, there's some comments on the speed through which the first milestone went through. That was a big factor in our hiring ramping up. Let me just lay it out there. Now that that milestone's through, we can talk about it a little bit. Because the milestone got a bit of a late start due to bureaucracy, let's just say. And so we had to make up time. Like we literally had to compress 6 months of work into 2 months and get it accepted. We were able to accomplish that. So the team was able to, get literally speed up work 3 times what it was supposed to and get that contract in on time, and, everything worked out. Now, the reason that that's happening is because March 31st is the fiscal end of year for the government. So that had to be done now, like right now. Or, it can't be attributed to the 2021 budgets, which it needed to be. Okay. Now, the milestones will be a little bit more spread out from here, as they're going to be in a more deliberate, rollout fashion, and not trying to meet a fiscal end of year deadline. They're trying to meet a deadline based upon, getting things to work properly. Yeah, exactly like that. So expect them to be a little bit more spread out. As far as those milestones are concerned, etc. Okay, so and then the next question, there's quite a few questions on what we're actually working on there. Is it Smart 2.0, or is it, an additional piece to Nexa technology, etc. Now, I can't comment specifically on what we're doing inside that contract. Okay, but what I can say is yes, we are working with some of our, components we built in the past, and some there's some new stuff being built right now. That said, as these things are given over to us in the forms of IP, we will be showing it off to you. And we expect, to see a press release about the ongoing success of this program within the next few days. Like there's maybe a week or so, but this one's moving along quite well, as you have commented on. Now, when will we see this tech? For this particular piece, you probably won't see any of it for about 6 to 12 months, I would guess. No, that's my best guess. Um, it's going to depend on when we're allowed to roll this out and when the government says we can use it in the private sector. So we'll have to wait on that based on previous, like I said, based on previous contracts, 6 to 12 months is probably accurate. Okay. All right. And I think that's got all of those in the main contract. All right. Oh, last one. Are we likely to see this pivoted to the private enterprise? Yeah, absolutely. That's our MO the entire time. So what we're trying to do is, when we build things for the public sector, we apply them to the private sector. Definitely. Okay, so let's go on and move on to the EV stuff. Okay. So there's a lot of questions around this, and I want to roll it up into one summary. The questions are along the lines of, who's the deal with, and what we're doing in the EV space, et cetera. We can't talk. Okay, I know you guys don't like to hear this, but we still can't talk about that one. This one's going to free up in the next 2 months or so ish, maybe even sooner. And we'll be able to take the take the covers off what we're doing in this space. But it's super cool. And one of the questions comes in about what I'm excited about. This one's pretty cool. But so stay tuned. That one's going to be coming free in the next few weeks. Is another question that came in? All right, let's stick with EVs for just a minute. But this information, just to be clear, this one's coming out in a press release because it's going to be material. But we've been on this for a few months now. People are liking the looks of what's shaping up, and we're going to, this one's going to go much further and much faster than we originally anticipated. Now, that being said, we'll get that information to you as soon as possible. So that's what we got on the EV until that next press release. And I believe Christina here is here to have answer a few questions, and I'll come back on. Christina, would you like to go ahead?
Ich muss jetzt eben hören hier. Was müsst ihr sagen?
Ich weiß, dass du nicht
No, Christina's having a bit of technical trouble. So I'm going to let her continue seeing if she can get that fixed. Let me go ahead and finish this up here. So I got a couple questions. I don't know where this came from. Is Claude coming back to DM? Not currently, but never say never. Okay, so let me get to the last few questions while Christina's trying to fix that, and if not, then we'll hear from her as soon as she can. So questions during the talk. Does Nexology have a sales team? Yes. Do they have targets? Yes. Have they hit them over the past couple of years? Yes. So far, so good. Any new verticals being considered? Well, there's always things under consideration. Right now, we're concentrated on getting Medical up and running and getting the EV portions of this contract out the door and moving on to the next milestone with the government contract. So for the next month or so, we're definitely not going to be moving into any new verticals or anything. We just want to make sure we stabilize the ones we're at. That being said, if there's a good opportunity that arises or something like that, we'll definitely take a look at it. And I think that's answered just about everything. All right, I'm going to give Christina another minute. If she can't get it to work, then we'll just have to hear from her on the next time. And again, just a reminder, we're going to do this once a month, see how that goes. Okay, so Christina's not able to get this to work for some reason. But expect to hear from her probably on Twitter or something like that, or one of our other social media outlets. Again, we'll be back in a month. We're going to keep it on Tuesdays. That was a good suggestion to move it here. Expect Medical news and EV news and other milestone news in the next couple weeks. So this stuff's coming out. It's coming out shortly. Be prepared because here it comes. All right, we will talk to you guys in a month. Thanks, everybody.
What about the most exciting?
You asked about the most exciting. There, we wouldn't have gotten to any of them if they weren't exciting. The most exciting with me overall, personal opinion, I like what's going on inside the space with the government. I can't talk about it yet. I do like what's going on in the EV space. Those are my two favorites. At the moment, Medical is taking up almost all my attention. So as far as the most work is concerned, it's definitely Medical right now. Expect to hear about those, like I said, very shortly. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Hopefully we'll figure it out sooner or later. For now, like when I can connect to the other router, I will. Apart from that, it'll just be over the other network.
Yeah, and that didn't work. Yeah. All right. Thanks, man. Cheers. Bye.